Hello and good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, welcome. So welcome to Start Grow Manage, Lunch and Live podcast. I'm not even sure what we're calling this these days, Carla. Interesting. Maybe we should go the David Letterman route and say, what is it, like interesting conversations with interesting people? I can't remember what he said. Like this guest, my
Well,
next guest
so
needs no
far,
invitation from me. What?
so far we call it our Lunch and Learn series. So we have, as our thumbnail over here says, this is our Lunch and Learn series. We may rebrand and rename to make it more exciting, but for now, this is the Lunch and Learn
The
series.
lunch and learn series. Well, what's exciting is today we're with SkipFlow. We're with Chris Yacone from SkipFlow, and we're going to talk about two of the issues that come up all the time in our discussions with MSPs, which is, how do I use AI, and how do I automate? And we're also going to relate that back to cybersecurity and how we can improve cybersecurity. And along those lines, SkipFlow is a sponsor of our training day that we're having on October 17th, where we're going to have CISA and Department of Homeland Security talk about how to do better assessments. They're going to give you tools. They're going to train you on how to use the tools so that you can put your logo on the tools and start using them with your clients to do high value assessments and possibly even use SkipFlow to solve that, to do the assessments, right? So anyway, so we're
Yep.
here with Chris. Chris, welcome. Why don't you take just a second to introduce yourselves and introduce yourself. You are a single human being, and tell us a little bit about SkipFlow. We'll start from there.
Yeah, so I'm Chris Yacone. I am the CTO of SkipFlo Inc. So you were talking about our product CtippyAi and how that can help. So I think first we got to kind of frame, what the problem we're approaching here is, right? Automation. Before you automate, you need to document. And to be able to communicate with generative AI and LLMs, I mean, you already have a channel that's opened up where you can quickly kind of speak to power the documentation that you're looking for and frame everything very quickly. So, I think first things first, if you aren't already utilizing the LLMs for their, writing capabilities, you should look into that. Secondarily, when it comes to automating beyond that, what SkippyAi's product does is we actually create playbooks using prompting. So you simply just ask for a playbook and the platform can generate it for you. So this is a bunch of kind of use cases, but for a managed service provider, some of the more critical processes that still need a warm body, like access provisioning or triaging information from several platforms for a security ticket, all of that can be replaced using Skippy, who will interact via email, Teams chat, the platform itself, to provide IT staff, more efficiency to deliver on what they have to at a much faster pace.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit, like, how does that work, Chris? Like, how is,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you could just take us through an example of how I would implement this as an MSP, how do I make this work in order to do the things that you're talking about?
Yeah, so just starting from a blank tenant, new customer,
Yeah.
you can come in there and you can just say, hey, I use these 5 tools, one-time configuration. You just list the name of the tools that you have. It will let you know if it doesn't have knowledge of those tools, but there's a very good chance that it does. And in knowing that, you can then ask for a process, say, hey, I need an offboarding procedure. And it will
Mhm.
actually go against all those tools and write steps to remove users from all the tools. So the only thing you have to do from there is provide, oh, nice, I made a thumbs up,
Yeah, no.
is to provide the credentials in the platform. And you now have an automated playbook that can pick off of a trigger. So if you want to kick it off of a Teams message, if you wanted to receive a ticket in your ticketing system, it will then select the playbooks, and then run them. If you have a concern of letting AI run wild in any kind of environment, like anybody should be, you can actually set it so that he triages the ticket up to the point where he decides, this is the playbook I was going to run. Like, I got an email from HR to create this new user. I was about to do this. The IT person can go into the platform and just click
So
approve to allow
you're
it
saying like
to move
Skippy
forward.
would say, "Hey, I got a request to create a new user," and so it would go out. The system itself would go out and ping somebody and say, "Should I do this?" And then you can
Mm-hmm.
approve it or not approve it. And then once you approve it, then the system will go ahead and create the user or take whatever action that
Comment
you
on the
decide.
ticket, close it
Yeah.
out. Yep. I mean, there are entire,
So
big four teams out there that are running identity and access management for companies where they've got 80 people just picking up the phone saying, what AD group was that for what application? And this is
can
all
you
just
do
to save time.
and is it with uh like you started by talking about the need to document processes. So can you take your own documented process and then somehow feed that into the system so that it will then create the process flow on the back of that documented process, or you take that
Correct.
documented process and turn it into something?
Yes, and it can also templatize policies and standards and draft procedures if you don't have one already.
No, that's great. And you started this coming out of cybersecurity, right? Like you have experience with cybersecurity and
Mm-hmm.
you've done a lot in cybersecurity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I've been building tech since I was young, let's just say. But
Yeah.
building tech as a hobbyist the whole time, I entered the world of cyber, climbed into building out departments, ending up in leadership, actually mostly in security operations. So it was all SLAs, KPIs, running the risk assessments, and being, the horsepower behind the cyber team. And I've worked with a lot of managed service providers, and there were some skill gaps where decision making ability or technical skill set got in the way of people doing something that was really, if they knew what they were doing, a couple day exercise, right? But you'll get a lot
Okay.
of deer in headlights in departments where they can't automate something. This guy doesn't know automation. I mean, he knows databases, but he doesn't know automation. So I wanted to build something that centralized that knowledge in a place where it can then build you the ability in the SaaS application to execute on that
Hmm.
knowledge.
No, that's awesome. So what would you say is something that MSPs have to know or understand about cybersecurity? Like what is a crucial thing that you wish all MSPs just got?
That all I wish MSPs would a lot of them sell risk assessment services, right? And then we're going to be
Yeah.
learning a lot about that at your event. But I noticed that a lot of time when they're doing the other types of work, they're not, they always have to work on that consistency to be auditable, to pass
Yeah.
those risk assessments, right? I think in cyber you're always going to have that problem where there's a split between IT, cyber, and then a third branch in software devs. There's completely different languages to each other and different worlds and mentalities. Cyber wants people to slow down to get it done. IT, wants to get off the phone on the weekend and do the fastest solution, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And well, but what I think is interesting about what you just said is also this idea of consistency, right? So
Mm-hmm.
being consistent in the way you act, having the policies in place. I think sometimes, one of the things that we've seen in terms of cybersecurity is that so much of it is psychological. It's about the humans, it's about
Mm.
the people rather than the technology, which sort of comes back to if you have standard processes, if you have standard ways of working, and you start to document and automate and implement these things, that would seem to take a lot of the risk out of cybersecurity because you have something
Mm-hmm.
you can tell if something is going in a different direction because it's going in a different direction than what it normally does, right? And it seems like what you were talking about, like what Skippy can do, would help to reinforce those standards, that
Yeah,
consistency, and make sure that it happens. So just bringing that consistency actually helps you be more secure. And I guess I wonder as well, do
yeah.
you think there would be opportunity to take some of these models and things that we're looking at from CISA and put those into Skippy? So we're actually automating a lot of the way that you do those assessments. So you're consistent, you've got great assessments, and you're automating that as you go through. I mean, does that sound like a reasonable scenario for what you're doing?
I mean, it's definitely a reasonable thing to templatize and try to automate those templates, right?
Yeah.
Um, so Skippy's already trained and receives his retrieval architecture, receives national vulnerability data, when they're keeping up with it on a regular basis, US CERT, um, CIS benchmarks, for example, NIST 853, like all of that type of information, regulation, frameworks, that's already trained into it. So,
Okay.
from the perspective of these templates, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to, add that to the list of things that, Skippy has innately to help guide the
So
responses he gives or the documents he writes.
so when you say that these things are innately programmed into Skippy, how do I use that as an MSP? Do I say, hey, create an assessment based on the latest vulnerabilities, or what would Skippy do with that, or how do I use that in
Yeah, so
Skippy? And
if he's already connected somehow in your environment, he'll know about it. So you can ask higher level, right? Where I could just say, hey, I want to be able to run a playbook to check a server um, for this standard, see if it's passing these configuration standards, like to create that scan. Um, it obviously will ask you for the OS, but to be able to then say, hey, on Ubuntu, I now have something that at any time I could just say this server, or I can go in the scheduler and I could schedule to do a whole swath of servers. And now we're regularly checking, and I didn't have to buy a vulnerability scanner. I didn't
yeah.
have to go call Tenable. I literally just said, hey, it's like the equivalent of a person going in and checking all those software packages, of a person going in and updating those files. Um, so it is going to eventually kind of creep into some of these tools that require agents and,
Yeah.
you know,
And you
in
were
the way
talking
Jeff,
AI
before we.
interacts.
Jeff and Chris,
Mhm.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So there has been a lot of questions in the chat about LinkedIn, only LinkedIn suddenly freezing, which is really unfortunate because everyone is interested in the conversation. And
Well, why
so
don't we? What can we do about that?
so there's two options. Either A, we can continue just streaming on our YouTube and our Facebook, or we can end this broadcast right now and restart a new broadcast so that way the LinkedIn crowd can hear the rest of this amazing conversation and make sure they get all the great content.
Well, can we just redirect the LinkedIn people over to YouTube? Because I think if we use a different link, we're just going to. Um,
And I've already gone ahead and done that as well. I just wanted to
okay,
give the
cool.
two of you the heads up, and so that way you know.
Yeah, well, sorry to anybody who's coming over from LinkedIn. I do not know why LinkedIn is freezing.
It
Unfortunately,
happens.
maybe that's something, Chris, that you can help us like figure out what is going on. Well, we're using the system to do the recording, and then it connects to LinkedIn, and they have these protocols, and I don't know, there are a bunch of steps that have to happen. So it's actually remarkable that it usually does work pretty well. So
Yeah.
hopefully everybody can get over to YouTube and yeah, I wish we could fix LinkedIn, but there are a lot of things I'd like to fix on LinkedIn. Just saying, but
Yeah, not just
but
this.
so, because I also wanted to. You said something interesting just a second ago, and then when we were talking about this before going live, you were talking about like bringing efficiencies into the teams and how you bring efficiencies into the teams, right? And so it's like you're saying you have a person out doing these uh, scans, right? So it's like having a person
Yeah.
going and reading these vulnerabilities and then applying that.
Yeah, anything that's repeatable,
What
right?
other ways are you seeing this efficiency come into the way we work with our clients?
So the 24/7 responsivity, right, for that initial triage, from a user perspective, not being left hanging if somebody's opening a ticket late at night, for example. Um, when it comes to providing and building out these services from an efficiency perspective, you can have the ability to kind of communicate to Skippy like they were an entry level, warm set of hands.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the point, is so where the efficiency kind of lies is this future vision that will, instead of an IT lead coming in and maybe having a couple of MSP or somebody who's a lead of an MSP team who has 4 or 5 guys, it'll just be the lead, somebody who's smart enough to know what needs to be done,
Yeah.
building out all of the ability to have Skippy do it for the users and for the general process. You need a new server built in AWS, Skippy will do it instead of the compute team. Things like that, where you can inject a much less, much less consuming process so that your teams can actually focus on the creative improvements, the continuous improvement they should be focused on.
It's such a key point, right? It's one of the things that we talk about a lot, is getting out of all of the busy work and the standard work so that you can focus on
Yeah.
innovation, creativity, and that's really where you're going to be adding value to your client, is when you can innovate and help them solve business problems. And you're only going to do that if you get completely out of doing a lot of the standard tasks and having
Mm-hmm.
your the standard tasks, or having one of our members, they actually basically don't have any level 1 people anymore because they've so fully automated their
Yeah.
their help desk that the level 2s do it. It's not a big deal because there's just not all that much happening in the level 1 help desk space. It's just automated, and then they can spend their time focusing on, all right, how do we bring BI in? How do we bring better analytics in? How do we
Yeah,
help our
maturity.
clients really solve business problems? And you can do that when you start automating these things and get out of the mindset of, I have to do all of these
With the
routine
cost
tasks.
to entry, that is always, in my experience, that has always been at the forefront of this, right? There's a lot of medium-sized businesses, publicly traded businesses that struggle to get their cybersecurity off the ground because it's cost prohibitive to get yourself to a point
Yeah.
where it's that automated. I mean, how long have we heard the term SOAR? I've never met a company outside of one bank that has fully automated a platform that's truly behaving like a SOAR, um,
Yeah.
just because of the skill gap. So that's where the benefit kind of comes in here, is if you just have a guy who goes, I know how to make an API key in that app, that's it.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how, Skippy's going to take care of the part where he says, now use that app to contain that host, like CrowdStrike, for example. All the scripting you would have had to do to get there is just an instant. And then it
No,
becomes something that could be, hey, user compromise, contain this account, right? You just ping
yeah.
them on
And
Teams.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I guess I wonder, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, because one of the questions that's come up is, how do I use AI with my clients? And
Mhm.
and the way I see what you're doing is, this is pretty geared towards technical services and IT
Sure.
services for clients. But I'm wondering if there's space to actually use Skippy to help clients. Like, can we? Does it have to be technical stuff that gets automated, or are there opportunities to actually help clients do their business better by using your program?
Yeah, so you can actually use, there's something called analysis steps that we have where you can actually have Skippy, make a decision point if you're thinking about like a workflow diagram where it's asking a question and deciding, where to pivot. In those kinds of settings, we've actually had a lot of success with one of our customers using that to move data So like just to simply say, hey, I'm going to use Skippy's ability to build a connector to call this API, move this data there after parsing it for something, right? So even if you had something functional internally that you wanted to do, that works. From a pragmatic standpoint, and I mentioned this earlier, if you're not already, getting on your 1 hour interview call with your client and transcribing that and using an LLM to help you organize that into a structure, you're really behind because you should be doing that already at the very least. But there are a lot of tools out there, and I highly recommend managed services pay attention to the tools, because AI is one of those technologies that, when something breaks in and it's a real game changer, it's going to turn, 5 people companies acting like they were 50. And that's, I'm seeing 5-10 years, you're going to have one-man armies. You're just talking, you're sitting on your couch, you know, it'd be a cool business idea. And like before you get up, the marketing site's done, So
Someone said this to me yesterday. They said,
mhm.
AI isn't going to replace humans. There's a better quote. This is somewhere. I don't know what it is. It's the concern isn't, or the thing that's going to happen isn't that AI is going to replace humans. It's that humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI, right? So it's that sort of thing where we're having that thought around, oh, I'm going to go build a business. And then being able to take that and turn it into a business, maybe that used to take 6 months, and now it takes 36 minutes, right? You can just tell ChatGPT what you want, and it puts the whole thing together, and then Skippy
And
can
make me
create
a PowerPoint. I want a pitch deck and a budget and yeah.
Give me a pitch deck. Though I will say, as one who reviews many, many pitch decks, please review your AI created pitch decks, because they're not as good as you think.
I just use them. I just use it for the images, and then I use Skippy's engine for the diagrams.
So talk to me a little bit about that. Like that I didn't realize so that you could do that. You're using Skippy to create diagrams and to create presentations and PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah, like you can have him draw the workflow diagram, then convert it, literally just click convert to doc and turn that into the written document version. And it follows all of those standards I was talking about. So it has, the policy approvals, the summary, the scope, the responsibilities, all of those are broken out. And it's in the context of the tools that it knows about in your environment. I can ask it about my AWS cloud and have it draw the network diagram. So not just process workflows, but again, technology. And then from a documentation perspective, you can ask for right now it's a policy, a standard, or a procedure. And you can have it either use its knowledge, or if you've ingested data from your environment, like use that context to generate a policy document or define a standard that fits your organization or your client's organization.
Cool. I want to give it a try. I'm not an MSP, but I'm wondering if we could use it for some of our stuff as well, because that would be. I love the idea of it being able to take all of
I'd
this
love to
stuff
give you
that we have. The what?
I said I'd love to give you a demo.
Yeah, well, I'd love to have a demo. Maybe we'll have another live session with the demo. Or how long does the demo take?
10, 15 minutes.
This is probably the wrong time to do it, but maybe we'll see if there's some interest, and we'll get a bunch of people together, and you can show us exactly how we would implement this, because I think it sounds like a really interesting thing. And it's like you said, we have to try a lot of some of these tools and look at how to implement them, because if we're not, somebody is, and we're just going to end up falling behind, right? And this is what the future of tech support and really the future of business is going to look like. So I would love a demo, and maybe we can generate some interest, or have you come to our summit and give a demo to our crew there. We'll see if there's any interest in that. And before we go, are there any questions out in the audience, Carla? Is anybody raising their hand?
So to answer your question, Jeff, unfortunately, there are no questions in the chat, but we do have people who have moved from LinkedIn to YouTube. So very excited about that. Managed to reroute people. I want to just quickly say that don't put all your eggs in one basket. Something that worked out really well for us is that we live stream on 3 different platforms. So when one went out, we had 2 backups. And you got to also think about your cybersecurity in that way, you know? You got to plan accordingly so that way you can protect your clients.
And maybe
Yeah,
also
that's
your AI.
availability right there. The CIA triad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what we do. We're good at covering our, but awesome. So, hey, tell me, Chris, anything else that you think we should know before we go on? Any stories you want to tell us? Anything that you think that I should have asked that I haven't asked that you want to cover?
No, just aware. Everybody's got to be aware that our threat actors that are out there. There's so much happening in the open source community with AI, and there are scary products being built on the other side. I think there's a 25,000% increase in phishing emails since ChatGPT 3.5 came out, if I'm not mistaken. So, we have to keep in mind that they're not slowing down. So while we want to make sure this technology is implemented safely in businesses, we can't fall behind, and we have to stay focused on the bleeding edge if we're going to deliver for our clients.
Well, we're gonna have to use AI to combat AI, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the bad guys are using AI to attack us, so we better put some
It's
of
like
that
the
intelligence.
droid wars in Star Wars. They're just a bunch of
That's what
robots
it's gonna become,
murdering
right?
each
It's
other.
gonna be like your AI attacking my AI, and they're both gonna be sitting there. It's like those two Google AIs that invented their own language.
And you're in the
Both had
castle on the hill just
conversation.
looking down, watching the chaos of AI
I think that's
destruction.
where we're going. I think that's where we're going, and then we'll just sit
I
back
hope not.
watch all of the AIs do stuff. And we're going to have some way to turn it into entertainment, so we can give AI scores or things and see who's winning.
Just prompt for a movie, and it's like you just give it like a paragraph out loud, and it gives you a 2-hour movie.
We'll try that with an AI movie, an AI taking over the world and defending itself against itself.
Exactly.
Cool. How do people get started with you, Chris? What's the best way to try this out? Schedule a demo or download something. What's the first
Just
step?
go to our website, SkipFlow.systems, SkipFlo. SkipFlow.com will take you there too. No W. So
So
if you land
SkipFlow
there,
without
you
a
should have
W.
the
We'll
ability.
drop that in the chat.
SkipFlo.com. Yep.
Awesome. So I that's great, Chris. Thank you so much for taking the time and looking forward to hanging out with you on the 17th. Carlo, if we could just put that slide up again. So anybody who hasn't yet registered, I don't know what you're doing, but anyway, if you haven't yet registered, come join us and meet Chris, and you can grill him or maybe get a demo or have coffee with him or drinks. I don't know, whatever you want. And learn more about both SkipFlow and cybersecurity and how you can potentially automate some of these things and make yourself more secure, add more value to your clients, and get out of doing some of those menial tasks, right?
Yep.
And with that, Chris, hey, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Sorry, go ahead. There's a little delay.
Oh, no, I said thank you so much.
Well, thank you too. And we will see you on the 17th. And
all right, see you there.
See you there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. And make sure to tune in on Tuesday for our next Lunch and Learn. We will be so excited to see you guys. Bye.